Welcome to the Amazon QuickSight Learning Series. My name is Jill Florent. I'm with the QuickSight Customer Success Team, and today we're here to focus in on QuickSight identity and multi-tenancy, user management groups, and namespaces. Our presenter will be Mayank Agarwal, who's the Senior QuickSight Product. Before I turn it over to Mayank, what we're going to be doing today is discussing all of the available user provisioning and authentication options. We get a lot of questions on this topic, and so I'm super excited to look at the APIs and UI features for managing users, groups, and namespaces. We do love to have you attend live our learning series webinars like this one, and one of the benefits of attending live is that we're going to try and prioritize any questions that you might have today. Where we do this is the recently relaunched QuickSight community. You can think of the community as the companion to QuickSight, where you can connect with other people and resources, especially for learning. There's a really wonderful area for Q&A, and if you take a quick snapshot of this QR code, it will take you directly to the QuickSight community. You can search for answers in the community, so many answers are already available to you. For instance, if you were looking for a dynamic title with a donut chart, that's what you see here. And in this case, it was asked and answered back in April. There's already a post that shows a detailed how-to and a video attached to it. That's in many cases what you'll find with our answers, is really good detail provided by our subject matter experts. When you attend live like today, I would encourage you to use the tag that you see at the top of the screen. QLS-ID will be what we'll use today. That's what our subject matter experts who are in the community today will be looking for to prioritize getting answers to any new questions that you post. Just to call out that you do have to have a QuickSight community login in order to post a question. So that requires an Amazon.com account. Last little bit of housekeeping here would be that we are recording today's session, and the session will be posted both on our YouTube channel, and that is also available from within the community under our video section. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Mayank, who's going to take us through the content for today. Give me just a moment. Great. Mayank, you can go ahead and share your screen. And we're seeing that screen.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mayank Agarwal, and thank you, Jill, for the great introduction and preface. My name is Mayank Agarwal. I'm one of the product manager with Amazon QuickSight team. And today we thought we'll talk about QuickSight identity and multi-tenancy management, and specifically when it comes to users, groups, and namespaces. So welcome again, and looking forward to presenting this. Today's agenda, I'll go over a few things. So we'll start with users. We'll talk about what roles users can have in QuickSight. What are the various options to provision these users? By provisioning, I mean authenticating specifically. We'll also talk about QuickSight groups, how and why you would need QuickSight groups and how you can create and manage them. And then last, we'll talk about namespaces. So namespaces are basically can be used to set up a multi-tenant environment in QuickSight. And then I'll also go over a namespace use case, like how can you set up namespaces and why you would need namespaces. So let's jump into it. I will start with users. So brief summary. So QuickSight users can have three roles, basically: admins, authors, or readers. Admins are the one on the top of the tree, for the lack of a better term, but admins have a lot of responsibilities, things like they can do or manage QuickSight users, so they can invite users or add users to the QuickSight account. They can delete those users as well. Admins can also set up account level preferences. There are I didn't put the whole list here because it would have taken many slides, but they can do a lot of things like setting up IP restrictions, quite a few security features, setting up access to other AWS resources. So a lot of account level preferences are managed by admins. Another important one is spice capacity and managing the subscription of for their account. And then last, admins, and a lot of people or customers don't know about this, or is not very clear. Like admins can actually act as authors as well, and which takes me to authors. Authors are the ones who are connecting to the data sources available to them within AWS or outside. They create the analysis, visuals for end readers. They basically present the BI, business intelligence dashboard, to the end users. And end users in this case are readers who are the consumer of these interactive dashboards, right? Now, how can you configure, or what are the various various ways where users can be authenticated into QuickSight? And I'll show a screen, the product screen in a bit, but when you sign up for a QuickSight account, you're basically presented with three options. And the next slide, I'll go into detail for each of them, like what they mean. But they're basically using IAM federated identity. So IAM is a AWS service, AWS IAM. So you can have IAM credentials or identities who can be federated into QuickSight. Second is QuickSight managed users. So in this case, QuickSight managed users is QuickSight is responsible for managing user authentication and authorization. So there is no other identity platform or identity provider involved in this case. And then third is using Active Directory. So a lot of organizations have Active Directory set up already, and QuickSight can use Active Directory to authenticate the users. And let me switch my screen a little bit to show you how these options look like on the product itself. Not this one, this one. So this is the account setup flow where these authentication methods are presented to the admins when they set up the account. One thing to note here is so these options, they cannot be changed or switched once the account is being created. So if you, let's say, choose Active Directory today and tomorrow say, hey, I want to move to IAM federated identities. So in that case, the account has to be created all over again. So these are the options which are presented and cannot be changed. Moving back to my presentation, let's go into a little bit of details what these options mean. So QuickSight managed users. So the cases where your end users or readers or authors do not have access to AWS account or AWS console, and also you don't have any sort of identity provider available, in those cases, QuickSight can be used. QuickSight can manage your users for authentication and authorization. No other provider is involved in between, and you simply don't have to set up anything. You basically use QuickSight to manage your user base. So the invitation, the way users get added to QuickSight is through inviting them via email, and I'll show that as well. The second option, IAM federated identities. So there are two ways identities can be federated via IAM. So first, if your users have access to AWS console and you are okay with having them access or having them as a user in AWS IAM, they can simply get access to QuickSight and they can use IAM credentials to log into QuickSight. The second option is if they do not have access to AWS console and you have some kind of identity provider available like Okta, Google IDP, or Ping, or even AWS SSO, you can set up the identity provider. You can connect the identity provider with AWS IAM, and QuickSight is, so basically there are three parties talking now. QuickSight in one end, your identity provider on the other end, and in between sits the AWS IAM. And then once the setup is completed, users can, if they are logged into the identity provider application, some sort of SSO application, they can simply click on QuickSight and get access to QuickSight console. If they do not, if they are not logged into your identity provider application, what QuickSight can do is QuickSight can redirect you or redirect the end user to that identity provider login screen, and then once the authentication is done, the user gets back into QuickSight console, and this is all done through SAML or OpenID Connect Token Exchange. The third option is Active Directory. So as I was saying earlier, a lot of big enterprises have Active Directory set up, and for good reasons, they don't want to set up another identity provider or manage users somewhere else. So QuickSight can those users can actually use Quick Active Directory credentials to get authenticated into QuickSight. One caveat is actually the first two options I have on here. When you're adding a user into QuickSight, you provide the role admin, author, reader. In case of Active Directory, the way role gets assigned to a user is via the membership depending on what membership they have in Active Directory. So in Active Directory, you can create groups. In this case, admins will create admin group, reader group, and author group in AD, and based on the user membership in those groups, QuickSight will figure out whether this person is author, admin, or reader. And then once they sign in into QuickSight, they get access to things based on their roles. So let's move on to groups now. So QuickSight groups. So QuickSight, think of groups as a collection of users or group of users in a container. And the big benefit you get by using QuickSight groups is the scalability, where you can, so let's say you have 1,000 users, an author creates a dashboard and want to share that dashboard with 1,000 users. Now, sharing with each user it's really not scalable. So QuickSight groups are really handy there. So you can put all those 1,000 users in a group and share that dashboard with a group or a folder with that group. And that way that dashboard gets shared with everyone at once instead of sharing one by one. And it's really it's super easy to create these groups or manage these groups. And I'll show you what it looks like on the UI. So we have two ways to create or manage these groups. One is QuickSight console. So admins can go to manage QuickSight and click on manage groups, and I'll show what that looks now. And the other is through public APIs. So if you have a desire or need or use case to use the APIs and do it programmatically, you can use these APIs to manage the group. So you can use create group, update group, or delete group APIs. And let me show briefly what the UI looks like. So once you are so I'm logged in, I'm an admin on this account. So once I click on manage QuickSight, I get presented with this left menu. And when I click on manage groups, right, so over here, you can create new group. And it's really straightforward. And then you can add users here. So I believe I'm in this account. So you can add me, or you can search for the users, and users get simply added here. And you can remove these users from the group. So it's really straightforward. And if you want to do like bulk, hey, I want to add 1,000 users, you can use the APIs, which makes it a lot easier. In the UI, it's one by one, and then you will see this group just gets created here. So really straightforward to use, very handy when it comes to it helps you scale when it comes to sharing with multiple users or thousands of users. Now let me go back to presentation. One thing to note here is, as I was mentioning with active or with AD accounts, since QuickSight uses AD groups to figure out the role of a user, admin, author, or readers. So QuickSight groups cannot be used when the account is set up with Active Directory based authentication, because we are using AD groups to figure out the roles of the users. The last in this chain is namespaces. So namespaces are kind of unique when it comes to, or different from users and groups. And basically what namespaces allow you to do is set up a multi-tenant environment, which means if you have your end customers and you do not want your end customers to know about each other or have any visibility into presence of each other, and you want to isolate each end customer's users, you will use namespaces. So they are logical containers which can be used to organize your end customers or subsidiaries or clients or teams or so on, right? And it lets you isolate users from each other. And by isolation, it means so namespaces can have users and QuickSight groups. So any user or group in a namespace will not have any visibility or any idea about users or groups in other namespaces. And what that translates into is that a user in a namespace one cannot share a dashboard accidentally or intentionally with user in namespace two. So that's what namespace allows you to do. And we'll go into one detailed use case after this one, which will hopefully makes it more clear, like why you would need namespaces or what kind of use cases can be fulfilled by these namespaces. And one important point to note is when you set up your QuickSight account, a default namespace gets created. So any users or groups, once they are being provisioned into QuickSight, they all belong to default namespace. You can create a new namespace using the public API, right? And if you want to add a user to a namespace, or when you bring in your clients or your subsidiaries into the account, when you register them with QuickSight, you can assign them a namespace membership. Or when you create a group, you can have a group in a namespace. But by default, when the account is set up, a default namespace is present in the account. And if you do not have any other namespace, all the users and groups will be in that default namespace. There are public APIs available today to create and delete namespaces. And for the, adding user to namespace is not a concept. So as I said, there is a namespace always present by default. So when you register a user, that's the time when you provide the namespace membership information as well. So there is no way to switch or move users from one namespace to another, or add users to namespace or delete users from namespace. It's more about registering user in a namespace, or deleting a user will remove that user from that namespace. Let's look at a use case, and hopefully that will make it a little bit more clear, like how and why you would use namespaces. So I have this fictitious company, OK Tank. It's an insurance company. It's an ISV. ISV is independent software vendor. So in this case, most of the ISVs they have their own application, a SaaS app, and which they use to embed QuickSight. Right? So QuickSight is part of that SaaS app. These so OK Tank in this case has it's an insurance company. It has broker in each state. So it is present in the United States. It has brokers in California, brokers in Florida, Washington, and all the 50 states, right? So those are the end customers or subsidiaries or client, well, in this case subsidiaries, right? So what OK Tank, so OK Tank has its own app. It's embedding QuickSight into it. So they are a customer of AWS Cloud, right? They have an IAM. So to create a QuickSight account, you need to have an IAM user who has admin privileges. So in this case, ISV, which is OK Tank, they have an IAM admin, and that admin signs up for QuickSight first time, right? And as I was saying in the last slide, when you set up the account, a default namespace gets created. So any users or groups you're provisioning into QuickSight at this point will belong to this default namespace, right? So what this ISV admin does is, like, he sets up a new QuickSight account. They start adding users who belong to OK Tank parent company, right? These users can be authors, seeders, or based or other admins as well, right? Now these brokers who are part of each state, like brokers in California, brokers in Florida or Washington or all other states, they need authoring capabilities as well. but the requirement, because of regulation or and business use case as well, one of the hard requirement is that these broker authors, they cannot share data or dashboards with users in other states for data privacy, and every state has its own regulation. So for that to happen, what the ISV admin does is it creates a namespace for California. They also create a namespace for Florida, and so on and so forth. They create namespaces for all 50 states in the United States, right? And then these brokers, each broker has authors and readers within their own state. So they provision these authors and readers within the namespace. Now, broker one authors will not be able to share accidentally or intentionally anything with broker two readers or authors. And it's not just share, they have no idea about the presence of other namespaces. So they're strictly contained or isolated within their own namespace boundary. Now, the next is the data itself. Now, OKTank, which is the parent company, it's the custodian of the data. It is responsible for providing data to each brokers, which they can use then to create their BI or business intelligence dashboards, right? So what OKTank does is it has these data sets, or one data set or many, based on how their data is structured. Now it will share California data with California namespace, Florida data with Florida namespace, and Washington, and so on and so forth. They use RLS, which is outside the scope of this discussion. So RLS are row-level securities. So they can use such rules to have only California data visible to namespace broker one, and then Florida data visible to other namespace, and then so on and so forth, right? So once this data is shared with each namespace, the authors of each namespace will be able to use that data, create the dashboards, right? And so each namespace has only visibility into the data which it should, and at the same time they are not able to they cannot share data or dashboards with other authors or readers in other namespaces. So it's a very hard isolation, right? And it lets OKTank to have a better data governance and not worry about accidental shares and breaking the regulations or violating the regulations. One important point to note, and it's a big source of confusion to a lot of our customers, is that these assets, and by assets I mean these data sets or dashboards or data sources, they do not belong to namespaces. They belong to overall QuickSight account. And you can imagine, if let's say the data set was part of default namespace, because of the isolation boundaries, the OKTank would not be able to share the data set with other namespaces. So for those reasons, the assets, they still are contained in the account. They are not isolated by namespace boundaries. And the governance can be done by various like RLS rules, row-level security, and the users being isolated prevents them from sharing the data with other namespaces or users they are not supposed to share with. So it's super important to understand that namespaces are purely meant for user and groups isolation. They're not meant for data segregation or data isolation, or they do not create data level boundaries. And, the last slide I have is, so I touched over quite a few things. So I wanted to have the summary table to to present a whole view of what we have talked about, and how various entities, what are the various options available. So 3 authentication methods, as I showed. I showed the screen as well, the setup screen. IAM federated identities, AD, and then IAM federated with QuickSight users. Single sign-on, which is not available in Active Directory, but it's available with other 2 options. And QuickSight managed users, in which is the case where users do not have access to AWS console and there is no other identity provider. QuickSight managed users are obviously available with QuickSight Managed User option. QuickSight Groups, I mentioned this before, they are not available with Active Directory option, but they are available with other two options. And then Identity Provider Groups, which is, so Active Directory groups, as I talked before, are admin, author, and readers, and that's how QuickSight figures out the roles. But there are some cases where customers have groups, their own groups in identity provider. So for Okta or Ping or AWS SSO, they have their own groups. Today, QuickSight does not take or synchronize with that group information. So if you have groups in your identity provider, you will have to write some sort of script or create the same group structure in QuickSight itself, automatically or manually, depending on how big things are. And then lastly, the namespaces or multi-tenancy, it's not available in Active Directory, because in case of AD authentication, QuickSight simply uses AD authentication token to provision the users. Those users do not get provisioned into QuickSight, so that's why namespaces are not available for AD option today. But for other two, namespaces are available. And for QuickSight managed users case, namespaces can be used if it's an embedding environment. With that, I think I'm done with my content here. And thank you so much. I'll hand it over back to Jill.
Thank you so much, Mayank. I really want to just say on behalf of everyone who attended today, I think you made some topics that can feel complex at times, very simple and straightforward. So really appreciate that. And to everyone who attended today, would love to just share with you that I put a link in the chat to our survey. If you would like to help us improve over time, we love to get better each time we do these. I also want to, again, reiterate, we'd love for you to, if you haven't done so already, join the QuickSight community. If you enjoyed today's session, there's more events that are posted all the time on our learning series. You can look under events in the community and sign up for more sessions on other topics like this. So thank you so much for your time. And throughout the day, if you use the tag in the community for any questions that you have, QLS-ID, we will prioritize getting answers to those questions. So appreciate the time. Thank you so much again, Mayank, and everybody have a great day.